sports takes from around the country. If this is your first time visiting, please, please, please don't forget to subscribe. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I see this channel just as much as yours as it is mine, and I really think we're building something truly special here, and it's going well just right off the bat, and it's honestly been amazing so far. And I read every single comment. So if you think what I'm saying is ridiculous, let me know in the comments below. If you think what I'm saying is awesome, then also please let me know. But either way, let's get into some discussions, let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. So without further ado, let's get right to it. We're with Speak, talking about whether or not the Ravens and Lamar Jackson are Super Bowl or bust. Now, before I get going in the clip, I do want to say that I do not think it's necessarily Super Bowl or bust. I mean, technically it is, but I don't think it should be, because Lamar Jackson, and I've said this in previous videos, he gets called out because of his lack of playoff success. And I understand the criticism, but it's not fair criticism because he hasn't had an elite team around him and his team hasn't been healthy. He's been trying to make do so much with so little. When you compare him to the teams of Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts recently last year, Joe Burrow. I mean, you could say that Joe Burrow had a terrible offensive line, which is true, but he also had some serious weapons that you just cannot be ignored. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Mixon, like those are all legit weapons. And who appears to be a legit good offensive head coach. The Rams with Matthew Stafford had, OBJ had, oh my God, I can't think of the other guy's name right now. It'll come to me. The other big wide receiver. So this is all, Cooper Kupp. So these are all teams that had like legitimate weapons. Okay, weapons that are like indisputable. Weapons that for the most part are household names, right? Jamar Chase has become a household name. OBJ, household name. Patrick Mahomes having Tyreek Hill, household name. Travis Kelce. Those are some serious dudes. Not to mention, outside of Joe Burrow, more specifically with Patrick Mahomes, he got to play with some of those guys for a few years before actually winning in the Super Bowl. He got there and, he lost in the playoffs and he lost in the Super Bowl to Tom Brady, so those are all things that legitimately happened. So I just don't think it's fair because even this team right now, yes, do they have some pretty good weapons? The Ravens, sure. But are they elite? Have they proven to truly be elite? Or are they all just kind of having a pretty decent year? I mean, seriously, the average fan can't name a single player really on the Ravens. I mean, they just can't. I mean, everyone knows Jamar Chase. Everyone knows Tyreek Hill. Everyone knows Travis Kelce, obviously. Everyone knows a lot of these big name players. The Ravens don't really have that. I mean, technically they have OBJ now, but he's obviously not the OBJ of old, right? He's old. So he's a newer version of the OBJ that's just not as good. So that's just what I wanted to kind of get off at the very top, that I don't think it's necessarily fair. I mean, these other guys that have had success have had legit offenses with legitimate weapons, and or they had legit coaches, offensive geniuses. Andy Reid, Shanahan, Sean McVay. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. And then when Jalen Hurts went to the Super Bowl, he had amazing offensive line. Lane Johnson, who might go in the books as the best, left guard in the world. Same thing with Kelce, might go down the books as the best center ever. And then you have A.J. Brown, an elite wide receiver. Devontae Smith, an elite wide receiver. I mean, so the list goes on and on and on. And in fact, that's what everybody was complaining about. That's when everyone was kind of calling out the Eagles last season, just saying oh, Jalen Hurts isn't that good. That offensive line is elite and all those weapons. Of course he's playing well. Kind of similar things what they said about Brock Purdy, what they're saying about Brock Purdy this year. And so you need to have legit weapons. Look how good Patrick Mahomes is doing right now. Not very well. They're straggling. They're holding on by just their reputation alone because they don't have their elite weapons anymore. And Travis Kelce is not who Travis Kelce once was. And so that just is what it is. So I wanted to get that off the top, and let's go into it.
Let's get right to the Ravens, because, James, I've been doing a lot of thinking. Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, they are not only elite, they are playing at an elite level. Yes, it has me thinking very simply, Joy, that this is a boom or bust, must-get-it-done year for the Ravens. I do not think it will be any easier for Lamar Jackson's Ravens in the future than it is right now. When I think about the top 10 AFC quarterbacks going into the season, 5 of them are hurt or benched. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, amongst others. Herbert, there it is. Herbert, that's the 5th one. Either hurt or benched, 4 of which are hurt, Russell Wilson being benched. Then you think on the flip side, Patrick Mahomes, as bad as he's ever been. Josh Allen, the Bills, they are as bad as they've been since Josh Allen has been Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, they got to get it done because that defense is elite. Lamar Jackson playing at an MVP level, and the path is of least resistance. It's not just about how good the Ravens are. The Ravens are really good. The path is really easy. It is a Super Bowl or bust year.
But listen to what he just said. He said that the defense is really elite. He didn't say that the offense is really elite, and that's not Lamar Jackson's fault. Lamar Jackson is doing everything he can. He makes that offense go. He makes that offense just is what it is. The defense obviously is legit, but at the same time, you can't always rely. The old saying of defense wins championships, that's just not as true anymore as it once was. The way how they've changed the rules for the NFL, they've made it very offense driven. They did this for not only safety reason, but also entertainment value, right? People love to see touchdowns. People want to see the action. They don't want to see these scores that are like 10-9, right? That's what they don't want. And then they also, again, did it for safety reasons. So it's very offensive driven. So really what it comes down to is your offense needs to be great. So to me, if Lamar Jackson had an elite offense that you were just like, oh my God, this offense is ridiculous. They have a Tyreek Hill and a Jamar Chase, like all these other teams often say, wow, their second option would be the first option on many other teams, right? Like that was the whole thing with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, or the whole same thing with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, or even with the Eagles, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Like those are all things that you commonly hear with, again, Cooper Kupp and OBJ. Like having those two, again, these guys are going to be bona fide Hall of Famers. He doesn't have that. He just doesn't have that. So, yeah, he does rely on the defense to give him good field position, which is obviously great and really beneficial. And I do think, again, in theory, it should be boom or bust, right? Super Bowl or bust for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Because this should be their year to be able to win it all based off of injuries and the quality of play of these other players, of these other teams and players. So I do agree with that. But I guess the real point that I'm trying to drive home is that it shouldn't. That, yes, if they get knocked out the first round, then you could be like, okay, that was a disaster. That was a bust. But if they go to the AFC Championship game and it's a close game and then they lose, right? It's one of those crazy things where they just lose, 1 second left and it's a field goal. It's like, especially if Lamar Jackson plays well, can we blame Lamar Jackson? And same thing if they go to the Super Bowl and they end up losing. God knows who they end up playing. I mean, if they lose to like the Cowboys, yes, that would be a disaster. If they lost to the Detroit Lions, yes, that would be a disaster. If they lost to the 49ers, people would just say the 49ers just have so many weapons on both offense and defense, right? I mean, people see that team as elite. The only thing that people ever say bad about the 49ers is Purdy. Besides that, everyone sees both that offense and defense as absolutely elite. So I don't know if it's so fair just to put all that weight on Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I get it, and I think it should be Super Bowl or bust. And I know it's and in some way I'm kind of contradicting myself, but I guess really, again, if they don't do it, then I just don't think it should just be this automatic. Because usually bust usually implies, see, I told you that they're not good. I told you they were pretenders. I told you he can't win the big game. That's the way how I'm kind of defining bust here. Or you just have to blow it all up. And I guess To me, that's not fair. If Lamar Jackson and the Ravens don't win the Super Bowl this year, it's not fair to say that they sucked, that they were pretenders, that this was all a facade, that this wasn't legit.
Here for Lamar Jackson, in my mind, where do you stand?
I 100% agree. When you talk about Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens this season, they are the best team in football. Lamar Jackson has them with the best record in football. He is playing at an MVP level. He will get an MVP. Everything is going right for them. Number two, they're healthy. And you're going to get Mark Andrews back. That is one of the toughest things to do as you go through a football season, to make sure you are healthy going into the postseason and playing at a high level. This is the time. I don't want to say now or never because Lamar Jackson is a special player, but it has to be right now. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is because I was on some really good football teams. I sit here with one championship, playing with a lot of great players, a Hall of Fame quarterback. And when we won the Super Bowl in 2010, you couldn't tell me we was going to be sitting up here with one. I was going to be sitting up here with one. Knowing that you had a young Aaron Rodgers, you had a young Jordy Nelson not fighting for no contract, you had a young James Jones not in no contract, you had young Greg Jennings, you had young Jermichael Finley, you had young Randall Cobb. Eddie Lacy was there. You had none of us was under contract. On the defensive side of the ball, you had Charles Woodson, Al Harris, Nick Collins, A.J. Hawk, Clay Matthews, B.J. Raji. You couldn't tell me we would be sitting here with one championship. With that being said, it is extremely hard to win championships. So when you have an opportunity, and just like you said, touching on all those players, when you have an opportunity, knowing that Joe Burrows is not in the playoffs, knowing that Justin Herberts will not be there because he hurt, knowing there is no Russell Wilson, knowing Patty's struggling, this is your time to go get this one done because you are healthy and playing at an extremely high level. And I hate looking forward and thinking about next year because we never know what that's going to look like. You can have injuries. Russell Wilson could be a Steeler. Aaron Rodgers could be coming back. You don't know what's going to happen. It could be harder. The time is now for the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson to go get this championship.
Look, I like winning. I like Super Bowls. But they're hard to get to.
They are.
And they're even harder to win. You just sat here and said it. If you'd have asked you after that Super Bowl how many you would have had, we didn't see big-time superstars talk about not one, not two, not three, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's really hard to do. So I hear you. This might be the easiest. Mm-hmm. But whoever said it was supposed to be easy? Mm. Even when it's hard, somebody makes it through. Mm-hmm. Somebody got to get there, even in years where everyone's healthy and everybody's good. We've seen it before. I can't say it's Super Bowl bust in that Lamar Jackson and the Ravens will never have another opportunity to go to a Super Bowl. I don't think that this is Lamar Jackson's last chance.
No,
he's not 40. They're not aging out. Everybody's on the last year of their contract. Rosters look different every single year. And every single year we go into seasons predicting things and it goes wrong. Who did you have in the Super Bowl?
I had Aaron Rodgers and the Jets in the Super Bowl.
No, I'm not saying that to point out that you're wrong.
No, you're good.
Because if Aaron Rodgers had been healthy, we might be having a different conversation 100%. About who's at the top of the AFC right now. But we don't know what's going to happen in this game. I think it would be disappointing if they didn't make it to a Super Bowl this year because they are the great team of this regular season. We know that. They beat everybody there is to beat, and the other team that we thought was great, and they smacked them around at home. So it would be disappointing. But how much of a disappointment is it for them to get to an AFC championship game? Say it goes down to the wire with, Josh Allen and the Bills. Are we going to look at this entire season as a failure? I think it will be hard for anyone to walk away saying it was a failure. Was it disappointing? I think there's differences in those words.
Yeah, I'm with Joy right there. I mean, to say Super Bowl.
So I do agree with that. That's kind of essentially what I was trying to say. You could be disappointed, but it wouldn't be a failure. You wouldn't just be like, again, you wouldn't be like, oh man, they blew it. They choked. They sucked. They this. Because, right, if they do lose to Josh Allen and the Bills, Josh Allen is an elite quarterback. Again, if he loses to the 49ers in the Super Bowl, the 49ers have an elite team. That's okay. If Patrick Mahomes turns into Patrick Mahomes and is Superman with the genius Andy Reid, well, then that's what you lost to. You can't necessarily just say, what the heck? You could say that this was our best chance at winning it so far, but, I don't want to just rehash and repeat everything that I just said because I pretty much said everything I had in that regard. But it is, getting to the Super Bowl, winning, it's brutal, it's tough. Look at the Eagles. They made it to the Super Bowl last year, and now they're fighting, just to maybe even win a game in the playoffs. And the Chiefs won a Super Bowl last year. This year, I mean, honestly, if anyone else was good in their division, there would be a wild card team as well, right? So realistically speaking, the two teams that made it to the Super Bowl last year, this year, are actually essentially wild card teams. That's the reality. So you just never know. It's just too hard. It's just too difficult. It's just often a coin flip. And that's what makes the Super Bowl and the NFL playoffs so exciting, because it could be anything. Anything can happen. That's why it says any given Sunday. That's why I don't love making predictions. It's not something that I really, want to get a habit of doing. Of course, I'll share my thoughts and views and opinions on it all, but it's just too hard to predict. And it's just fun to also sit back and just see what happens, and, not say that this team or that team, because they didn't get as far as we think they should, is a failure, or that it's just a bust. But at the same time, with sports, and when you're really good, you have expectations. So with all that said, if you want to consider Lamar Jackson as elite and as amazing and as up there with the Mahomes and the Burrows and, all these other players, but then you got to make moves. You got to ball out in the playoffs, and you got to get to a Super Bowl, and hopefully you win a Super Bowl, because without that, you're just never going to be truly seen as elite unless you've been on teams that are just not that good. We know Justin Herbert is a really, really, really good quarterback. He's had terrible coaches so far, coach fired, and he hasn't had any type of elite, healthy offensive weapons. So it's just like, I can't hold his feet to the fire in that regard. I'm just not going to do that. And so in a lot of ways, it's the same thing with Lamar Jackson in years past. He just has not really had anyone, like I said, the casual fan can't really name like anyone outside of Andrews. So we'll have to see what happens. I'm excited for it. I'm rooting for the Ravens. I think the Ravens can make some noise. But I think, this is also sports. Since they've been blowing away everyone, they blew away the 49ers and they blew away the Dolphins. It wouldn't shock me if they get punched in the face the first round and lose. I mean, that happens all the time in sports. All the time in sports. Remember the Super Bowl, the Tampa Bay versus the Chiefs? I don't care what anyone has to say. No one thought that it was going to be a blowout and just not even competitive. No one in their right mind would have ever guessed that. And I don't care who you are. Not even close. And that's what happened. So you just never know. But what do you all think? Do you think it's Super Bowl or bust with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens? Do you think if they don't, it's all on Lamar? Who gets the blame? Is it the coaching? Is it the players? Would love to hear your thoughts on this one. Let me know in the comments below. Please don't forget to give this video a like. It really helps with visibility, and it really helps with the algorithm. And definitely please subscribe. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. Thank you so much, and see you next time.